as I'm kind of just here and chilling. So you can listen to the music I'm listening to if you like. I'm evidently still having a little bit of internet trouble. So we can just stick around here. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this song. This is B. Where I think is a singer that's just got a cool little style, I think. So this song is Come Back Kid. I figured it was a good theme song for what we're doing today. My computer is I think 12 years old, and it is over it. It is having a bit of a heart attack at how hard I've been working it these last few weeks. It's gonna make it. It's fine. I just got one more night left. Well, 2 more nights left. It's gonna be just fine. Alright. So hopefully we get a good group here soon and get started. For now, I'm mostly just going through my notes and kind of trying to remember what we did yesterday. This is the Rising Above Masterclass. And so yesterday we got to talk quite a bit about just the meaning of work, the stress of work, how it's just kind of not as great of a thing as it should be, as God created it to be, as it was intended to be. If you haven't seen that one, I can actually, speaking of which, I should actually grab a couple of links and put them in the chat. A couple more minutes. Let me just do one more thing. Sorry, I'm doing 15 things at once. It's better this way. About 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'm going to leave the song on. We just got 1 minute left. We'll let people kind of get on. I have had the craziest of weeks with technology. Like, I feel like all of technology is against me. So yesterday we tried to get onto YouTube, and YouTube wouldn't even it wouldn't open. It took 20 minutes to just like connect to the internet, which was super fun. So then I was like going in and out and trying to restart and switch internets and all these different things. And so that was really annoying. And so then my emailing system all of a sudden decided yesterday that it was only going to email people one email a day. I don't know what made it decide that. It wasn't doing that before, and evidently it's not doing that today. So, it made me wait 24 hours from yesterday's email before it would let me send another email. And then I spent all day trying to learn how to share, um, how to work with the YouTube system to kind of share a slideshow. And I just technology gets the better of me every time. I can't do it. I don't know how. I downloaded all the things. I watched all the videos, and I just can't. So I officially give up. But what have you? At least we got on today a lot easier than we did yesterday. So welcome. I'm just rambling at this point, but welcome. So we're doing the Rising Above Masterclass, and tonight we're talking about wellness and why wellness tips just are not usually as helpful as you think they would be. You'd think they'd like solve all your problems and fix everything, and that's not quite how it usually goes down. They're not always the most helpful, or if they are helpful, they're not the most long lasting of changes. So we're going to go through that quite a bit today. There's a lot of things that get in our way when we're trying to rise above, when we're trying to get over a past injury or a past setback, when we're trying to get over the past craziness of the pandemic the last few years, right? Whatever it is that you're trying to rebuild from, it takes some energy, and a lot of things can get in our way as we're trying to do that. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about today. What are some practical steps that help you to stop thinking defeated and kind of just get started again and start dreaming again? So, if you are here with me, can you put in the chat? I think the chat's working. It said it was disconnected, but it looks like it's working again. Can you throw in the chat? Where are you from? Were you able to join us yesterday? Were you here with us yesterday? Because I was going to start with a little review, but I don't want to bore you. I'll give that a minute because I'm not sure if it's working or not, but actually, I guess let's see if I can put something in there. Okay. Well, it looks like it's working from my side, so hopefully you guys can see it too. Okay. So we'll give one more minute, kind of let people jump on. And then we'll kind of, like I said, get started and do like a little review of yesterday. So if you don't, oh, okay, we got a couple of people jumping on. Hey, there's Clara. Good to have you, hun. So sorry. See, Clara was one of the many people that could not get on yesterday because of technology, and you gotta love it, but I also really just hate it sometimes because it makes my life so difficult, and I never know how to fix it. And I couldn't just turn my computer off because then that really would have defeated everything. So, what have you? We made it through, and we finally got her on late last night. So we are actually going to review things a little bit today, Clara, so that hopefully you get the little part of the um, thing that you missed. That was really just my biography. So we'll give it one more minute and then get started. Clara, how are you doing today? Did you have a good day at work? Was it a crazy day at work? Hopefully nothing too bad. I actually had the day off. I actually had 2 weeks off, which was really random. I guess they hired a new person to start doing shifts with us. And so that kind of made the schedule a little bit different than usual. So I went on vacation, and then I worked for 4 days, and then I had 2 weeks off. It was the strangest of schedules, but worked for me because then I had more time to kind of work on this. So, All right, guys. Well, let's get started. So, we'll do a quick review. So, like I said, I tried my best to kind of get things working and going from the perspective of the PowerPoint, but we're going old school. So, I'll show you the pictures that I've got and we'll just go from there. So, we are rising above. We are reigniting your calling and getting you back to where you're trying to be and connect with your goals in your career. So, oops, already messed it up. Hang on. I can do two things at once. Here we go. So, I mean, obviously, you know what I look like. You can see me. But anyway, so Dr. Ashley Toriak, I am a general pediatrician, and I have a lot of weird jobs. I have a lot of weird interests. I like to write. I like to speak. I like to do things like this, to teach. And I also really love marketplace ministry, and that's a bit about what we're talking about today. How does your faith and how do your beliefs kind of really make your job better, make you more excellent, and better able to progress in the career that you're following. Okay. So, my story, I've done a lot of random things, like I said, and it sounds on the surface like everything's just great. But my story wasn't actually, it was actually kind of rough. So, I actually got sick. There's a picture of me in the hospital. So, right after I graduated from medical school, I actually got sick and was admitted with bacterial meningitis and pneumonia. So what ended up happening is I actually got pulled off work for a couple of weeks. I couldn't start working as a doctor to do my residency, and it really was quite complicated for a while, but I did go back to work. I had a lot of help. I had special recommendations, and I had a lot of people watching me. And residency really was just a little bit more work than I kind of hoped it was going to be, because I was just partially recovering. I was pulled off work for 2 months. And then when I did get back into work, it did just take me a while to kind of recover. Essentially, I had like a concussion for about a year and a half. I kind of just had a brain injury. So it would be great if I could tell you, hey, life is great now. We're done. Everything's better. Just buy my book for $20 and you're good to go and your life can be perfect too. Right? Like, isn't that how everybody does it? That's how these webinars go all the time. Right? But that's not the kind of webinar that we're doing. This is not some like amazing story of my 5,000 sales of, I don't even know how that story would go. But this is a story about how to rebuild, because a lot of people talk about getting to the culmination of their career and doing these incredible things, but not everybody talks about how hard it is to get there, that middle part, that part where it gets the hardest. Right? So, to be clear, I did finish my medical training. I did complete residency in 2013. And I don't actually have a picture from that graduation. This is actually my graduation from med school, but for some odd reason, we didn't take pictures that day, but what have you. I did do it. I have a diploma somewhere. So I did finish my residency, and I looked back at the end of residency and really just saw the miracle that it was for me to finish with a brain injury, but I lost no patients. I had no wrongful treatments done in spite of myself. I had no like suits brought against me, low lawsuits or anything like that. Like, I really considered a miracle that I was able to finish my training and was able to do it in spite of the injury that I had. I knew it wasn't regular, and I knew it wasn't just me. And so what we're talking about today is that rough part in the middle, like the part where you can see the struggle. Here, I think the next. Oh, so the part where you can see the struggle and you know how all the work that you have to do, but you don't really know exactly if you're going to make it, right? You don't know if you've got the energy to get all the way to the finish line. You don't know if you're going to be able to get everything completed in a way to be able to make it to the finish line. And so that part of the story started for me the day that I got pulled off work. So everybody knows in residency, well, people know, I think, in general in residency, hey, good to have you. We were just given a review. You didn't actually miss anything, but glad to see you. So in general, I think people know that residents work a lot, right? Resident doctors, the general idea of residency, it came from the term resident, like you were literally supposed to live at the hospital, and that's how you were supposed to learn your job, right? So everybody else I knew, everybody that had gone to medical school with me, was working like 80 hours a week, but I got pulled off work. So I'm just sitting at home by myself, trying not to think about the fact that, I might not ever be able to go back. They're waiting. I have to get some cognitive testing done, and I have to wait for my insurance card to come in first. And so I'm just literally just sitting at home waiting. And so, like all hardworking overachievers, I didn't just sit there, right? I did some research, right? So I pulled up all the articles I could find on brain injuries, how long they took, what kind of things help people get better. I looked at how long symptoms lasted, things like that. I did go to the residency program for like the 8 and noon lectures. So I did just like go hang out with the rest of the class for those 2 lectures that we usually had. And then I go to the library and I do all these research. I would do these brain exercises that I found online. They're like little like games that you play. And then I'd like read, I'd do some exercises, right? I just gotten out of the hospital. I was pretty tired. So I'm doing all these things. And after all of that was done, I did all the things that I could possibly think of to like rebuild myself. It was usually about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Again, everyone I know is still at work, and I've got a solid 8 hours left to just sit around and pretend to not think about the fact that I might not be able to finish my job, right? I might not ever be able to go back into medicine. So it was super fun. So one of the things that I did do is I started pulling out wellness tips. I had been a part of the wellness committee when I was in med school, and so ended up kind of joining them again, or pulling out all those notes again, kind of thinking through what would be helpful, what would kind of help me get through this. And so that's where today starts. How do we practically rebuild our lives after a setback? So I hope you're still with me. That was a really long intro. Sorry, we're going to get going. All right. So I've showed you this picture before. So like I said, this workshop is about the middle, the part where you're looking at the goal that you've set. You're looking at the career that you want to get to. You're looking at the finish line, and hopefully you can see the finish line, but it looks really far away. It looks kind of impossible. It looks really difficult from here, right? And it's the part where it's the hardest to believe that you're actually going to be able to finish strong. So I want to point something out. Hopefully, so okay. So if you're not watching or you're just listening to me, take a look at the screen real quick. This is a picture that I have been using for this particular workshop. Now, take a look at this picture. What do you notice? Does anything feel familiar about this picture? Does it kind of remind you of something? It should. All right. So these are both pictures that I took. Okay. Same lake, same day. Literally, what happened is I literally just walked down the path closer toward the lake, and the sky brightened up. Like I mean, it just got warmer as the day was going on. So what you end up with is two very different looking pictures. One looks like a wintry sky and the storm is coming and everything's going to be bad. And the other one looks like, yeah, it's so pretty. It's like a magazine cover or something like that. And I, when I was going back through my pictures, I realized that I had different versions of the mountains that looked strikingly different, even though it was only like an hour later. So if you want to, one looks so sorry. So one thing I talked about was that when we're rebuilding our lives, we want to think about building a vision statement or rebuilding one, depending on how bad your setback was and how much of your life needs to change because of it. So this is the deal. This is I think, a really good picture of what that's like, right? You can be in the exact same spot and have a completely different vision of what's coming in your life, right? You can have a completely different view of your life, your dreams, your possibilities, how hard it looks like it's going to be, how happy it looks like the trek is going to be. It looks completely different just depending on the circumstances surrounding you. And it can seem way more daunting or way more impossible and less worth it, depending on just even something as simple as lighting, right? So this is, I think, the problem far too often for when people are talking about wellness tips. They do not concentrate on this enough. And this is what is in your head. What are you actually thinking about the situation that you're in? What viewpoint do you have that's determining how you see the entire situation, how hard it's going to be to walk out of it, and how realistic it's going to be? Okay. So for me, this is what happened during residency, right? Like I had this great idea. I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm gonna help people. I'm gonna serve and like learn all these things, and it's gonna be awesome. But it sounded a lot different when you've got a bad brain injury and you can't go to work right now. When you put that in front of it, it becomes the bigger issue, and it kind of blinds all of the benefits of being a doctor, right? And big setbacks can do that to you. They can change the complete way that you see all of your goals, all of your life, all of the details. So for some people, if I say something like, go plan a vision statement, go write down all of the things that are important in your life and what you want to, like who you want to become. For some people, that's easy. Even if you're starting over, you just start imagining what you want to change and write it down. But for some people, it's really hard to see past the problems. It's really hard to see anything but the struggle. It's really hard to see anything but the pain that you've already been through. And so, if you're experiencing that in relation to work, we tend to call that burnout, right? So, burnout's defined as a state of physical or emotional exhaustion, and it kind of involves a sense of reduced accomplishment and loss of personal identity. The way I kind of think of it is it's basically like it's a form of depression that's kind of related specifically to work, specifically related to your career. Because the way that it affects you is a lot like depression. Mm, thanks for sharing. Yeah, so you can't see things the way that you used to. It's hard to see the silver lining. I love the way Claire said that. It's harder to care for yourself, it's harder to care about things that matter to you, and it's harder to dream for anything new. Okay, so there's different levels of burnout. I think it's kind of like a hill. Sometimes you'll have like a really bad week and you'll feel very frustrated and things don't go well, and then it kind of settles out and things are fine the next week. But if burnout is something that's kind of affecting you, if it's bad, it can kind of affect the way that you do your job, and it can kind of affect like whether or not the work that you do is good or bad, right? And then so day two is all about this journey. How do we kind of work through that? So there's a lot of different ways that people respond to bad problems and similar stories. When people have big setbacks, there's a lot of different ways people respond to it. So one way to respond is to become a workaholic. Okay. This is kind of where I normally land, right? I'm in medicine. This is kind of just where I normally go to. And these people tend to have the idea to fix things, to like restart things, to get in there and do it again. So we want to come up with new strategies, right? We want to come up with doing a way to do it better, a way to do it easier. We want to like think and plan and fix as much as we possibly can. But then we get to this point where we're like working to crazy places. We still haven't necessarily fixed all the problems that we see. We're answering emails instead of going on vacation. Like we can easily get to a point where it's ridiculous instead of helpful. But the goal for workaholics is fix it, fix the system, fix our bosses, fix our coworkers, just fix it, right? So, what field are you guys working in? Are you coming from a medical field, or if I remember, somebody was in banking, somebody was a teacher. So different fields tend to lean different ways, right? Again, medical people, we're the workaholics. We love kind of just getting everything done. But practically speaking, even when you have a clear vision of what you want, life gets in the way of getting there, right? So, like we discussed yesterday, medical field as well. Great. Okay. So, like we discussed yesterday, God had a great vision of what work should look like and how we would get there. But then work was cursed, and there's this big backdrop. Okay, and then thank Craig. I know this chat is going through so slowly. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep up with you. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think I know who Cindy is, so I know that she's hardworking just like me. we're family. But yeah, just in general in the medical field, this is kind of how people tend to operate. Like, what can I fix? How can I change things? How can I make things better? It's just how we think, right? So this is where I started when I got sick, right? Like, this was my vision. I got to get back into medicine. So let me just work. Let me just figure it out. Let me make some lists. Let me do all the things. Let me go see the doctors. Let me take the vitamins, whatever. And so the first year became work, sleep, and doctor's appointments. And that was the whole year, right? Like, and I started to really question if the situation, or was it the situation that was like, it was it the illness, or was it the job itself that was dragging me down? Because I lost all sight of anything else anywhere. I wasn't doing anything fun. I literally gave up all my vacation time. Like, I really was working and sleeping, and that was it. And so, and there's a lot of things that have been happening in all kinds of fields right now, especially in medicine, especially in any kind of service industry. We know that no job is secure if somebody's quitting every 2 weeks, right? That changes the landscape of everything. We know if a company can't decide if you're going to work from home or if you're going to work from the office space, that totally changes everything. That changes how people are commuting. It changes what the work environment is like. And so there's a lot of things just in general in the workplace right now that are really insecure, and it's making it really hard to tell like where to invest your time, where to invest your money, and even makes people really frustrated, especially these workaholics. Like, what do I go try and fix? Because so many things are changing, it's hard to even know how to help, right? So the first group of people will work. They will work and try and fix whatever problem they see. They will work until they run themselves into the ground, basically. The second group of people are would give up. Okay, so this used to look like just quitting your job and walking away. The way it's kind of been looking in the last couple of years is, I think it's called quiet quitting, right? So it's not that you left your job, but you're not really trying very hard at your job, right? Like, you're not actually trying to fix anything. You're not actually worried about what other people are doing. You're just there to do the bare minimum and then get out, right? You don't intend on staying long. You don't care about working harder and looking good. You just quiet quitting, right? Nothing I do changes, so why bother? What's the point of putting in some extra effort? And then the third section, so one, people who are working hard, two, people who are giving up, and three, people who are burning out. These are different ways people deal with trauma and setbacks. So if you keep working hard endlessly, this leads to burnout city, and this is really what happened to me. Like I said, burnout is defined as not caring and having it negatively affect your work. And so I remember getting called in to my boss's office, and she said, one of the attendings was concerned about you. He wanted me to meet with you. Why were you crying at work today? Right? Like, it's so totally legit question. But I was by this point, I was already burned out. I was only a few months in. And so my response was just anger. And I was like, I was crying, whoop de doo. Like, I'm sorry. This has been a long year for me. What are you going to do about it? And she's like, I'm thinking that maybe I should call your mother, call your family, and we should talk about it. And I said, you can call whoever you want. Isn't none of that is going to change the situation I'm in. None of you can fix it. None of you can make it better. And then my pager went off, and I got up and walked out the door. And that's not my personality, just FYI. But to be fair, I probably should have been fired for that, right? Like, there's no reason that I should have been yelling at her for calling me in to deal with me crying, right? But really, I mean, burnout kind of changes you into a little bit of a different person than who you used to be. Okay. So now there is a better option. We're going to come back to that. But first off, let's talk through all of the things that typically come up in wellness. If you guys want to write some ideas in the chat, what kind of things do you usually think of? What kind of tips do people usually give you when you're trying to do things that are healthy, when you're trying to recover from burnout, when you're trying to build up your wellness skills? What kind of things do people usually suggest to you? Write your thoughts in the chat if you can for me. And I'll see if I can pull up this slide. I don't know how easy it'll be to read, but We'll pull it up anyway. Okay, see, now we're having more technology problems. Okay. Okay. So, some coping strategies. These are the ones that I feel like I hear over and over again. I've read a lot of different articles about wellness and how to like recover, how to keep yourself from getting burned out, things like that. And so these are the tips I see a lot. So we're going to talk through each of these. So the first one is go for a walk. Exercise. Hey, yeah, good timing. All right. So go for a walk. So yes, totally legit. Okay, listen to motivational videos. Oh, that's good. Read the Bible. Okay, that's not on here. These are not usually Christian ideas. Eat healthy and work out. Yeah, yes. Okay, great. So we're going to go through the list on here. So go for a walk is the first one. And that's a totally legit and totally reasonable thing to say. But even if I think back to my job right now, right? I work in a nursery right now. So I work with a bunch of newborn babies. If I'm stressed out and all the babies are crying, I can't just leave them in the nursery and go for a walk. I can't just leave them there by themselves. I can't be like, oh, babies, they're fine. They'll take care of themselves and just go for a walk, right? So this is a reasonable plan, but practically speaking, it doesn't always fit in your workday well, right? Like there are some times where you can go for a walk, where you can take a break. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to kind of get in nature, get some fresh air, things like that. But this is a very small it's a very small thing that you can't always fit into your day. And it's something that only lasts so long. Like, right? Like if we could go for a walk and that lasted for the rest of the year and made me feel good, then awesome. But let's be real, it's not. It's kind of like eating. We have to do it regularly for it to be helpful, all right? So do something you love, right? So this is part of what Clara was hitting at. So this is great in theory, but when you're really getting burned out and when you're really getting depressed, this just gets harder and harder. So you're telling me I'm working 12-hour shifts and now I need to wake up even earlier to do something I like or stay later after my 12-hour shift. Like, right? Like who has the energy for that? Like practically speaking, doing something you love is actually hard to fit in your life, especially when you've got a lot of things going on. Okay, spend time with people who fill you up. I love this one. You mean like the person that I was arguing with before I came to work this morning and now have to go back and like argue with again about dinner or whatever? That person, spend time with that person. Cool, cool. Yeah, that sounds super relaxing, right? Like I get it. I get the concept, but sometimes it's actually not helpful. For me, this one actually became really stressful because I would try and spend time with my friends from med school and they would say I was complaining too much, or they would say, well, your life sounds super easy. You're sleeping 10 hours a day. I wish I could do that. And so, like, instead of being supportive and helpful, they were really just, making me feel worse. So it kind of depends. Sometimes that one can go either way. Let's see. Take a deep breath. I love this one. This is actually a really good one. This is one that I had to work into my day quite a bit back then. So, actually, if you want to just practice with me right now, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Gosh, we're not going to go through all the physiology of that, but it really is very helpful for you and such a great thing. Even if you're in a complicated or a demanding medical field, you can do this like while you're about to intubate someone, right? Like so, taking a deep breath, you can take that with you everywhere. But the benefits, it only lasts a few seconds is the problem here, right? Like this is not something that's going to change the rest of my life or the rest of my year because I took a deep breath. Now the next one, yoga meditation. People say this all the time, and I had such a hard time. It took me like 2 months to learn how to meditate, right? Like I was too frazzled and too like hyped up and too stressed out. It took so much energy for me to learn how to calm down. It wasn't all that helpful right away. It took a long time for me to be able to figure that out. As medical professionals, we're trained to go. We're not trained to rest. And so it takes some practice learning how to do this and do this well. And then last, quit your job. My personal favorite. So, yeah, sometimes you are in a toxic environment, and sometimes a change of location does lessen that. But whatever job you're doing, like we talked about yesterday, any job that is out there is literally cursed. So that means that every job is going to have its own stressors, it's going to have its own problems, and it's going to put you at risk of burnout again. right? We don't have the power to change that. We don't have the power to change the circumstances around us. We really only have the power to change ourselves. And that's really what we need to start with. Improving wellness doesn't start with a bunch of impossible to follow rules. It starts with changing the way that we're thinking about ourselves and about our job. So it's not that we, if you go back to that picture of the mountain, it's not that we climb the mountain better. It's not that we try harder. It's not that we take more breaks, right? And it's not that we give up entirely and just go back home, right? It's seeing the entire picture differently and using that to kind of help us move forward. So, how do we change our expectations? How do we practically do that? So we go back to what God has said and kind of let Him in, right? So the acronym that I use for this is called RESET. Sorry, I can show you this page. RESET, RESET. So it's react, emote, surrender, engage, and try again. Okay, so let's chat through some of these. First is react. So the first step when you encounter a stressful situation, the first thing is to kind of be aware of how you're reacting. If you guys want to write in the chat for me, what is your tendency when a stressful situation comes up? Do you tend to fight or run or freeze? So for me, my natural tendency, my mom has this great story about how when I was a 3-year-old, oh, sorry, I got the picture from her and everything and forgot. When I was 3, we went out for Halloween and walked up to this house, and something scary happened, and like some monsters came out, and I took off running down the street, right? Like my natural tendency is to run. Like something doesn't look right, I'm getting out of here. Okay, so in general, that's kind of how I respond. Now, I've been trained in medicine to stay and address the situation. So do not be afraid that if like you're my patient, I'm going to run away from you or anything like that. But in general, when you're talking about like a life situation, we tend to have different responses. Sometimes we tend to freeze, sometimes we tend to fight, and sometimes we tend to run. And knowing what your natural tendency is really important to kind of help you think about how to move forward. Because every single time that you make a decision, your tendency is going to be this tendency is going to come back to you. So, for instance, for me, so during residency, my tendency again is to run. So, if residency is bad and I don't have a life and I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, maybe I should just quit, right? And so that's one of the things that I was really considering for quite a while. But again, that's my natural tendency. So I need to make sure that I'm not doing it. I'm doing it because it's the right decision right now and not because it's just a natural reaction, right? And so the same thing goes true for freezing or fighting. Sometimes it's going to put you in the exact right place, and sometimes it's going to put you in a situation that you don't need to be in. So you got to be really aware of it. So step one is react. Step two is emote. So because the tendency, especially in our world, in the culture that we live in, the tendency is to kind of to go or to deal with a problem, right? And so, or to ignore it, one of the two. So there has to be a point, regardless if you're fighting, if you're freezing, or if you're running away, there has to be a point where you stop and you make yourself stay and emote. You remember what you've lost. You remember what you've just dealt with. You remember what you've been confronted with. And really just mourn the situation, mourn the way that for me, I lost the last summer I ever would have had, right? That was the last summer break. And I spent it in the hospital, right? And I really did have to go through and like mourn the things that I hadn't expressed out loud. I did this with my counselor, the things that I hadn't thought about that I had given up because of the situation. And it really kind of helps you let go a little bit of what's going on. So this part is really hard for me. I spent a lot of residency saying, I'm tired, right? Like that is my go-to response. I don't give you an emotion. Say I'm tired. And so that means either I'm physically tired and I want to go to sleep, or I just, was walking up the stairs for hours and I want to go lay down, or it means that I'm emotionally overwhelmed at this situation and I don't know how to deal with it. Like, I'm tired is really all I had to give for a long time. I'm really good at ignoring myself and my own perception of the situation so that I can deal with the situation. And I think that's something that medicine kind of teaches us to do. So we really have to kind of step back and think hard to learn how to listen and trust ourselves. And this is not something that I can really, this is something that took me a while to kind of learn. But if it's something that you're interested in, at the end of this workshop, I'm going to kind of go through in more detail, like what process I kind of use to do this. So some people are just good at expressing emotions. I am not one of them, right? Some people are good at expressing something, right? But emotional outbursts are not necessarily what we're trying to go for here, right? Like, we're not trying to make you like some like fly off the handle and be crazy person. Because a lot of times those emotional outbursts, if you know someone like that, they tend to portray anger or frustration or whatever, but they don't always convey what is actually going down deep down inside. And that's really what we need to get to the heart of it, because it just covers up our fear and our pain and keeps us from really healing and moving forward. So who cares, right? People are emotional wrecks, and that's just how it is, right? Like, who cares? What am I talking about? So I'm going to give you one more example and then I'll explain. So the best example I think I have of this is traffic. I commute to work. I drive about an hour to get to work, and it's a two-lane highway, and it's really annoying. There's a lot of semis and ugh. So I have this problem a lot. But essentially, the speed limit is 70, and inevitably, at some point during this commute, you get stuck behind someone who's going much slower than 70. Why? I don't know, but they are, and you get stuck behind them for miles, right? Like, you can't go around them. Blah 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 blah. So if you think about the last time that you were on the interstate, when you finally get the chance to go around them, what do? You don't like go around them and go back to going 70, right? Like, all of your frustration, all of your anger, all of your emotions go down into your foot, and you hit the brakes and you are flying down the road like a crazy person, not because you wanted to, but because those emotions are driving you forward, right? Your misplaced emotions are determining everything, because you can't go yell beat up, fight the guy that was wasting your time, right? So now you're just acting like a speed demon and going crazy. And this is what happens so much at work. And this, honestly, this is where we are as a society right now, because the last few years have been just plain crazy town, right? Like, a lot of things have happened. People don't know how to react to everything. People don't know what to do with their emotions. And so people are just overreacting to the slightest of smallest of crazy of inconveniences. And nobody wants to dig down and admit and be honest that there's something going down inside. And instead of dealing with that, they're just flying off the handle about something crazy that doesn't even make sense, right? And then others, there's another approach that you can take. Again, if you think back to that traffic analogy, sometimes people just give up. Like, you're like, I am not going to be able to get around this person, so I'm just going to slow down, and I'm going 50 now. That's just how it is, right? And again, this goes back to that same concept that we were talking about earlier, the quiet quitter, the person who just, I mean, they're still there, but they just don't imagine that anything could be better, right? They're just given the bare minimum, and just, that's just how it is. So our emotions matter. They determine how we move forward. They determine with the veracity with which we move forward. And digging out those negative ones so that we can respond and we can make decisions wisely, it determines how and if we move forward. Okay. So if we go back to those wellness tips, let me see. So again, we talked about a lot of great things. How do any of these tips help us assess our emotions, help us assess how we're looking at the situation, help us deal with whether or not we still want to be in this situation, help us figure out if we're fighting or freezing, right? So none of these things help us with that. So it's not that they're not good steps. It's just that they're not going to make lasting impact on your life and totally change things around for you. Okay, they're not going to make an impact that stays. So going back to our list, we were resetting, we were starting over with knowing how we react, and then we're thinking about our emotions, going back and kind of assessing ourselves. And then the third step is surrender. So this is where you learn to break, not break down, but break. Okay, break with your past expectations. So when our beliefs get questioned, when our lives get changed, turned upside down, we do a one of three things. We ignore it. We pretend pretend it's not a problem. We argue and fight. Give me that back. That's my belief. That's the thing I want to believe. That's the thing I want to hold on to, right? Or three, we choose to break. We let our assumptions break. We let our false beliefs break. We let whatever story that was clearly not true that we were kind of trying to hold on to break. Um, the best example I guess I have of this is again during the pandemic, the last few years, going to the grocery store. Right, I live in America, and it's the land of the rich and the free and whatever. I can get whatever I want from the store. But when you go to a grocery store and there are empty shelves after empty shelves after empty shelves, something's either wrong with your store or something's wrong with your belief, right? And so again, you either ignore it, you fight back, or you choose to decide that something that you were believing about the situation was untrue. We have the option to change things, but we have to listen not only to ourselves, but about what everything that's going on. So, what am I saying? So, what does that mean for you? What I would say is it's an opportunity to change. That it's the best time to really practice questioning your assumptions. So practically, this is a great time to say, what do I keep telling myself about this situation? And is what I'm telling myself about this situation, is it true? Okay. So one of the things that kind of echoed in my mind during residency was, I'm not smart enough for this. Now, that was something that I had kind of wrestled with a little bit in med school. Like, everybody's so smart. Can I really keep up? Blah, 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 blah. But obviously, I mean, I finished med school. I did just fine. But it really came back when I had brain damage, when I had a brain injury, and then had to really, really face this idea like, am I actually smart enough to do this? What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if I'm working with a concussion and this is the sign that it's time for me to leave or give up? Is this a temporary inconvenience, or is this like a sign to is it like a growing problem that I need to work through, or what? Yes, imposter syndrome definitely comes up for everyone in residency, and that definitely hit me as well. And what it became for me was like this deep seated fear and distrust of myself. And so I found myself getting to work like an hour earlier than everyone else. I would double, triple, quadruple check my work. I would write notes in the evening after, like, I was doing all these things to kind of just be really careful and really, really cautious. And some of them were really good at helping me make sure that I was making good decisions, again, for my patients. But some of them were just me operating in fear because I didn't trust myself. Right. And it became a mantra for me. And so instead of fighting for my patients and fighting for my career, I almost let a half truth literally let me walk away from the career entirely. And so, really, what you have to do is pay attention to what it is that you keep telling yourself. Is this a reasonable problem that needs to be addressed? Is it an excuse to keep you from dealing with something? Is it a half lie that you just need to break and get rid of? And I get it. There's a lot of external problems and a lot of things that you just can't work around, but you can control what's going on internally, right? So we need to really focus on the only thing you do have the power to control. And that's the way that you're thinking about this situation, right? So I like to look out for words like never, always, things like that that you tend to say. This is never going to end, blah, 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 blah. When you're saying that about the situation, really make a note of it over the next couple of weeks and pay attention to what you keep coming back to again and again. Because it really does, like I said, drive the whole way that you go forward and the whole way that you heal. So the last step in this is after you engage, you try again. So after you healed, then you get back in there, make some new goals. And if you're in a good place, then I mean, that's easy to do and you just move forward. But if you're like most of the world right now, you've still got some things to deal with. Dreaming sounds hard and overwhelming, right? Trying again sounds exhausting. And if that's where you are, that's okay. Just know that you need a little bit more time before you move forward. And so I'd done an exercise for years that kind of just helps me connect with my emotions. Oops, and I was supposed to pull up a song and I totally forgot. So let me see if I can do this real quick while we're talking. But essentially, what I do is I just I just pick a song and then listen to it over and over again and just pick a lyric in the song that that just stands out to me, something that's noticeable. And then what I'll literally do is just write that lyric down on a piece of, or on my computer usually, and then just kind of just write whatever it whatever it makes me think of. Sometimes it'll make me think of a current situation. Sometimes it'll make me think of something in the past. But it kind of tends to bring up a lot of things. I think I like doing it because music is so emotional to begin with. It kind of helps me to identify what emotions I'm feeling. So let's see. I'm going to give you a quick example. We're not going to listen to this whole thing. Um, and it's not connected to the internet, so it's not playing anything, so that's helpful. Hang on. Okay. Hopefully, you guys can hear this a little bit. I used to float, now I just fall down. I used to know, but I'm not sure now what I was made for. What was I made for? Taking a drive, I was an ideal, not so alive. Turns out I'm not real, just something you paid for. What was I made for? Okay. So this song actually kind of reminds me of residency even now. The lyric that kind of stands out to me is "What was I made for?" And that's something that again I struggled with in residency so much. But that phrase is kind of what became a key to kind of get me out of the doldrums. But it wasn't to start with. And initially, it just kept coming back to, was I smart enough? Was I good enough? Was I capable enough? Was I going to be able to get myself cognitively together or not? And I had a lot of people, again, like I said, that were watching me, people that were watching my grades, people that were watching my work. So they actually had me sign up with a counselor that was completely separate from that. And she started going with me through the steps, the vision statements, things that I had given you guys in their homework. And what we started agreeing was that what I was naturally gifted at, what I was made for, were not things that I was going to necessarily use in the field of medicine. So, something like this, being able to listen to music and being able to teach someone, this is not something that I do as a pediatrician, right? And I never will. Like, that's just not what the job is. So, we agreed that there was a lot of gifts that I had that I was not going to use in medicine. We agreed that I was very much struggling through the year. I didn't have a lot of fun. I didn't like where I was, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay. And so, we agreed that I was unhappy, right? And so, her suggestion was the classic suggestion: I think you need to leave. It's time for you to leave medicine. You need to give up on this. And I think if I'm unhappy, then it's time to go. And I really thought hard about it, but I decided that that felt like running away. That felt like something that I would regret. Even if I didn't love, or even if I didn't ever work in medicine again, I wanted to finish. I wanted walking away to be my decision and not because of a failure on my part, but because um, it was time, and I wanted to finish what I had agreed to, what I had started, before I walked away. I wanted to finish residency first. So what actually happened was she ended up firing me as a patient. She said, "You're too depressed. I can't help you. I don't know what else to do with you." Um, and so she gave me the number of someone else. But essentially, I kind of lost her. And honestly, she wasn't the only person that I lost during residency. Again, I had friends that were just not were annoyed with me, people that were saying that I was being too dramatic, people that were saying I just needed to get over myself, right? And I kind of felt like I was standing in the middle of a room screaming sometime, and people would just walk by and say, "You look fine to me. Get on with it." All right. And so that was the frustration I was in, but also then things started getting hard medically speaking. So I started going to the parts of the hospital where my job was literally to watch a child suffer, where my job was um, sometimes to watch a child die, right? And I really, whatever little bit of faith I had left, I really started questioning God and just wondering if my whole life and my whole plan, whatever I was made for, was just wrong. Because I had learned about God as the God who can heal anything and can change anything and can do anything. And instead, you walk into a children's hospital and you kind of wonder if God just doesn't live there or just doesn't go there anymore, you know? And so, like I said, I started working with my pastor and we really started thinking about the big picture. What was I made for didn't necessarily just come down to how good I could perform at work. It didn't necessarily come down to work being some kind of torture or punishment. God didn't put me in medicine to kind of like get back at me for something I'd done wrong. Again, our job was meant to be an opportunity, not a punishment. And in spite of all the people that gave up on me, my counselor and friends, and in spite of all of the work I tried to do that I really couldn't do well, what I saw really clearly that year was that God did not give up on me, that God stayed with me even when all I was doing was just crying, right? Even when I was doing a job, even when He was really doing the work of a job that I just plain couldn't do. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't get love and appreciation by performing well. I couldn't stand out by just working harder and overachieving and doing something cool. I literally had nothing left to offer. And what God offered me was love. And I don't know about you, but the last few years have kind of left me feeling like I don't have a lot to give either, right? I don't know what to do about the healthcare system, right? I don't know what to do about the number of people that are quitting. I don't know what to do about financial situation. I don't know what to do about the threats of World War III. Like there's so much going on that really does feel just kind of overwhelming and disheartening at times. But like I said, I walked with my pastor through several months of study of scripture and wellness and prayer, and it really kind of changed everything. And so we're going to talk tomorrow about just the anointing that I ended up getting and how God really reminded me that He is a God that does miracles still. Um, but if you're ready to move on and you're ready to move on from feeling lost and confused and wanting to move on with God in a new way, I did just want to mention that I am offering a longer program, and it's basically called the Restoration Course. And I'll put the link for that in the chat here if you guys want to look at that at all. But essentially, we'll keep going with, like I said, this is 3 days of info. I packed this into 3 days, but it really was supposed to be months of information. And I'd love to kind of really kind of work through that with you, kind of help you understand better, and really work one-on-one with you to kind of figure out what's really tripping you up, kind of what's getting in your way of kind of healing, and help you move forward. So definitely take a look at that. I'll talk more about that tomorrow night. And then I will send out the replay of this and the notes and everything a little bit later. But I hope you guys are doing great. If you want to throw something, if you want to throw in the chat what's one takeaway that you had from tonight. And then, like I said, tomorrow we will talk more about um, after you've got a vision, what does that really look like? What can that look like even at your workplace? And so I've got some great stories about kind of how God brought me back around and really reminded me again how much He really does want to help us and how much He really can change the world still, even if we don't see it every single moment of every day. He's still got the power to. So I hope that encourages you guys. Let me know if you've got any comments, questions, or concerns. And I will see you around this time tomorrow night. Sound good? Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was not an easy store to walk through, but I am kind of thankful for it now. You know, God really did show up and show out in my life, and you gotta love that. Mhm. And remember that God is still there. Amen. All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.